What's up, psychedelic investors? My name's James, and you're watching The Psychedelic Investor, your number one news source for psychedelic stocks. Today, we're going to be looking at the top 5 catalysts for the psychedelic medicine sector for the second half of 2021. But real quick, before we get into that, I just want to give you guys a quick reminder about our partnership with Psychedelic Spotlight. Psychedelic Spotlight is a media company focused on the psychedelic sector, and they look at stock stuff, but they also do coverage of cultural issues when it comes to psychedelics and so much more. And frankly, they're just such a great media outlet when it comes to psychedelics. Personally, I use their website for doing research for these videos all the time, psychedelicspotlight.com. And while you're there, while you're checking out their website, go to their newsletter and make sure you subscribe to that. Because if you like the content that you see here on this channel, you'll get even more of it in their newsletter. For example, we recently did a collaboration with Psychedelic Spotlight where we gave a little video update on where Compass Pathways stands as a company right now, post their most recent financial disclosures. So that was a really great exclusive episode we did for Psychedelic Spotlight, and you can only get it on their website, psychedelicspotlight.com, by signing up for their newsletter. Now, without any further ado, let's get back to the topic at hand, the top 5 catalysts for the second half of 2021. If you enjoy this episode, you already know what to do. Like, subscribe, share it with your mom, hit that notifications bell, and comment down below. I really hope you guys enjoy this episode. Number 5, a new psychedelics ETF. So, sometime in the near future, although an exact date has yet to be decided, ETF company Advisor Shares plans on launching the world's first ever actively managed psychedelic medicines ETF. This ETF, called the Plant Medicines ETF, will be traded on the New York Stock Exchange and have the ticker symbol PSIL, PSIL. Having ETFs in the psychedelic medicines industry is extremely important for attracting retail capital because often it can be difficult for retail investors who maybe have heard about the magical potential for psychedelic medicines to treat mental health issues like addiction, depression, PTSD, anxiety, and more, but who aren't necessarily experts in the science and can't tell the difference between the 20 plus different public companies all claiming to be on the cutting edge of this industry. So an ETF actually allows people to invest in the industry writ large and not have to worry about picking the winners and the losers. Even for somebody who spends most of their day, every day, researching the different companies, it can often be difficult to decide how to rank the different public companies. So investing in an ETF can be an attractive option. Now, there are 2 big reasons why the Plant Medicines ETF will be a big deal. First, it is actively managed. Now, we already have 2 small passively managed ETFs in the psychedelic medicines world. We've got the Defiant Psychedelic ETF and the Horizon Psychedelic Stock Index. And while both of these are fantastic for the moment, they rank the weighting of each company within the ETF based on their market cap, meaning that the more valuable that the market decides the company is, the larger proportion it will be in the ETF. But the problem is, often, when it comes to these early stage biopharma companies in the market, in the short term at least, the market can be wrong, or give value for the wrong reasons. I, personally, would prefer a team of scientific experts combing over the scientific progress and data of these different companies, and ranking them in an ETF based on their expert opinions, and based on whose clinical trials are showing the most promise. And then, based on the science, if any companies are found to be undervalued, investors can have a larger chance of making big gains. Personally, I have been waiting for an actively managed psychedelic medicines ETF for a while, so I am extremely excited for PSIL's launch. Second, Advisor Shares is a major player in the ETF world. For example, they have the 2nd and the 3rd largest marijuana ETFs on the market. Therefore, PSIL, once it goes live, should attract a significant amount of capital to it, which then will be funneled into the psychedelic sector. So this should give a little bit of upwards pressure on the price of the stocks that it holds, and it should make raising capital for these companies a little bit easier. It must be noted that PSIL, PSIL, will also hold marijuana companies within it, which honestly, I'm not the biggest fan of. I'd rather it just be a pure play psychedelic medicines portfolio, but nevertheless, this still will be a major catalyst for the psychedelic medicines industry in the second half of 2021. Number 4, California decriminalizing possession of psychedelics and legalizing the personal production of psilocybin. As we speak, there is a bill in the largest state in the union making its way through its assembly that would legalize the possession of compounds like DMT, LSD, ibogaine, psilocybin, and more. Going even further, the bill allows individuals to grow their own psilocybin mushrooms at home and share psychedelics with each other. However, selling these products would still be illegal. Despite the fact that the bill has been watered down just a little bit since it originally entered the Senate, for example, limits on the amounts of each substance a person can carry have been added. So despite that, this would still be the most transformational decriminalization bill in all of North America and probably the entire world. As of August 20th, the bill has made its way through the Senate and various committees within the Senate. It has also made its way through several committees in the Assembly, and now only has one more committee to go before it can be voted on the Assembly floor. Then it will get sent back to the Senate, who will then have to approve any changes the Assembly made, and finally it will get sent to the governor's desk for a signature. Now, while it is still technically possible that this bill could fail, particularly if the political situation in California changes with an upcoming recall election seeking to oust the current governor, it is looking more and more likely that this bill is actually going to pass. Now, if it does, then it will go a long way to help continue the shift in public opinion on psychedelics. So most people still to this day, when they hear about LSD or magic mushrooms, they don't really know anything about the drugs other than the fact that they are illegal and therefore scary and bad. Ooh. They don't know that these substances are non-addictive, they don't know that you can't overdose on them, and they don't know that there is an ever-growing body of evidence that suggests that they could be some of the most potent medicines that we have in our arsenal when it comes to treating mental health. Now, this shifting public opinion will be essential for the long-term success of psychedelic medicines companies. Even if these medicines work, even if LSD is great at treating anxiety, for example, if you can't get society on your side, then it's possible that these medicines will never see the light of day. So even if this legalization wouldn't necessarily help research companies in the short term, the resulting cultural shift could pay dividends in the long term. Number 3, the commencement of many Phase 2A trials. For a long time, the only companies in the psychedelic medicines world that actually have begun Phase 2A trials were MindMed and Compass Pathways. As a reminder, when investing in the psychedelic medicines field, the number one stat that you guys should be looking at is how many clinical trials a company has and how far advanced said clinical trials are. To give an extremely brief rundown, because we already have a video on it, so I'll put a link above for anybody that wants to see it. To give a very brief rundown of the clinical trial system, Phase 1 trials have a very small sample size, often only a dozen or so people, and test mostly whether the drug is safe or not. Phase 2A trials have a larger sample size, often with dozens of patients, and it starts to test efficacy and is also focused on testing different dosing levels. Phase 2B usually has a couple hundred patients and is focused on efficacy. And Phase 3 trials can have many hundreds or even thousands of patients testing for efficacy, but also for rare adverse reactions that may happen to 1 in 1,000 people. So if a company doesn't have at least a Phase 2A trial, personally, I view the company as aspirational at best. Luckily, by the end of the year, the number of companies who have commenced Phase 2A trials will have increased substantially. Now, I'm not going to go through and list them all because there are a lot, but I will walk through some of the trials that I personally am most excited to see start. First, we have Tryp Therapeutics, who plans to begin not one, but 2 different Phase 2A trials by the end of this year. Both will use the proprietary form of psilocybin, TRP-8802, and will test treating eating disorders and fibromyalgia. Next, Cybin is set to begin dosing patients with CYB001, which is their form of psilocybin, to treat major depressive disorder. MindMed also plans on launching their Phase 2A trial treating adult ADHD with LSD microdoses, and ATAI plans on launching their trial treating opioid use disorder with a proprietary ibogaine derivative. Like I said, this isn't an exhaustive list of all the Phase 2A trials. Companies like Tryp Therapeutics and Awaken also have trials, but what is important here is the rapid expansion of research being done into various psychedelic compounds. There are also many companies like Medicine who plan to launch their own phase 2A trials in Q1 of 2022, so the party isn't going to stop when this year ends. Everyone invested in the psychedelic medicine space should be excited by this rapid expansion of research into psychedelic compounds. This is, without a doubt, a major catalyst for the industry in the second half of 2021. Number 2. Project Lucy Phase 2B trial begins. So Project Lucy is MindMed's project looking at treating generalized anxiety disorder with LSD-assisted psychotherapy. This year, the company has already finished their Phase 2A trial, though no data has been released yet, and by the end of the year, they hope to have passed all the hurdles that the FDA has set in front of them and commence their Phase 2B trial. This is going to be extremely important because it's going to be the largest ever LSD clinical trial with around 200 patients. Now, despite a lot of research going into the compound, going into LSD before it was made illegal in 1966, outside of MindMed in our current era, very little renewed research has taken place in LSD, and this is a shame, it's a tragedy, since the early research into LSD was very promising. If MindMed is successful in convincing the FDA to greenlight the study, which all indications point to them being so, this trial will mark a new era of LSD research. Of course, this is going to be a major boost to MindMed as it will show investors their ability to progress clinical trials, but it will also hopefully spur more and more research into LSD and maybe convince other companies to start working with the compound. Of all the public companies working with psychedelics, MindMed's Project Lucy is the second most advanced project, right behind Compass Pathways' Psilocybin for Depression study. Which brings us to, you guessed it, number 1. Compass Pathways Phase 2B trial results released. This Phase 2B trial was testing treating treatment-resistant depression with psilocybin-assisted psychotherapy. And the psilocybin they're using is actually their own proprietary form called COMP360. And this is so important because it is the world's largest psilocybin clinical trial to date, and probably the largest psychedelic medicines clinical trial to date also. It has 233 patients across 22 sites in 10 countries. And as stated above, of all the publicly traded companies and their trials, this one trial is the most advanced. Compass expects to release the results of this trial by the end of this year to the public, and if this trial was as successful as previous trials testing treating depression with psilocybin, for example, there was a 59-person study done by Imperial College of London, which found that the remission rates were twice as high for those taking psilocybin as compared to SSRIs, which is the most common form of antidepressant, or the 24-person Johns Hopkins study, which found that psilocybin was 4 times more effective than antidepressants. So if this current study, which the results are being released at the end of the year, if the results of this are the same as the previous smaller studies, and this is going to be the biggest boost yet for the thesis that psilocybin therapy and psychedelic therapy in general can be effective in treating depression. This would be a major turning point for Compass Pathways, of course, so any investors in that company should be waiting with bated breath for these results. If they are positive, which I both hope and honestly believe they will be, then Compass will be able to move to Phase 3 clinical trials, which would be significantly larger, again, perhaps including as many as thousands of people. As their completed Phase 2B trial is the most advanced of any psychedelic medicines company to date, this puts Compass on a pathway, see what I did there, to obtain a first mover's advantage in the psychedelic therapy market. However, despite everything that I just said, this will also be a major catalyst for the entire industry. Even if you're not invested in Compass Pathways, and if you don't like the company for reasons we're not going to get into right now, the results of this trial will give us a signal whether psychedelic therapy in general is as exciting a field as we all believe it is right now. So if they have very successful trial results, I would expect a lot of big money to flow into this industry writ large. Of course, some of that capital is going to go to Compass itself, but I would also expect other companies working with psilocybin, such as Medicine and Numinous, for example, to see boosts in funding, and even companies working with other classic psychedelics like DMT and LSD, such as, MindMed. I would expect them to see a big boost in funding as well. So the long and the short of it is this: if the trial is successful, then the entire industry should get a boost. On the flip side, if it is not, it could hurt the entire sector. Either way, as we look towards the rest of 2021, no other event will be as large a catalyst for the entire psychedelic medicines industry as the COMP360 trial results being released. So get excited and start praying to the mushroom gods that this trial was successful, because if it was, then 2022 is going to start an entirely new era for psychedelic stocks. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. If you did, you already know what to do. Like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Hit the notifications bell, tell your mom about it. And also, for those of you who made it to the end, comment down below praying to the mushroom god so I can see how many of you made it to the end. And just one last thing before you guys all leave me, I just want to give you guys a huge thank you. I don't know if anybody noticed, but recently we passed the 5,000 subscriber mark, which is a really big milestone for the channel. And it's all because of you guys, the people watching the channel. So I just want to say that I don't have the words to describe how much I love you all and how great you have all been as a following. So just thank you guys so much. And yeah, I'm at a loss for words. I don't know what to say. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you again soon.